as an organization, the more we're getting, more information we're getting to make better decisions, to direct what we're trying to do better, and to just stay on top of what you all are thinking about. So for those of you who don't know, I'm Amy Shamroe. I'm the president of AAW of Michigan for another couple of months. Barb Duran is my president-elect, and so she will be our president come July. But really, the meeting. So if you want to say hi, real quick, Barb.
Don't rush it, Amy. You got at least like 8 or 9 months to go. So,
Well, depending on how November goes, I'm either
yeah.
gonna be just as hairy and busy, or I'm gonna have a ton of time on my hands.
Oh,
For
good.
those who don't know, I'm the mayor of Traverse City as well, but I'm running for re-election right now, and one of my commissioners, a man, is running against me. And
Yeah,
so, wish me luck, but we'll see how it goes.
you'll do it.
Thank you. I appreciate the confidence. Um, but anyways, I just wanted to get this started. We could do slide decks. I'm more a fan of those when people are in person because I think it makes more sense. I'm kind of just wanting to do a little bit of Q&A with you all first, and then of my questions to you. And then I want to talk a little bit about the strategic plan that AAW just put out. I'm very excited about it in a way that I didn't expect to be. Strategic plans to me can either often be very aspirational and maybe lack a little bit of you know, action, maybe is the word for it, or they can be very plan specific and it makes you feel like you are stuck doing on a path for a couple of years with a certain agenda that may or may not be what you think should, that may or may not fit in what a branch is trying to do or a smaller unit is trying to do. And my feeling on the AAW strategic plan is it really, to me, helped to bring together some of the things that I don't know. The way I explain it is I have trouble sometimes now trying to do the elevator speech for AAW when somebody talks to me who's this organization? We all know what we can talk about our branch doing. We can talk about it at the book sales we have. We can talk about it at any of the fundraisers we do. But, this kind of to me helps to crystallize a little bit of what our mission is and how it differs from other organizations, but how it plays nicely with other organizations too. So I kind of wanted to ask you, and you can volunteer first, or I will put you on the spot. So any of our non-board members, so Suzanne, Sharon, or Mary Jo, how have you in the past described AAW as a whole organization, not just talking about what your branch does? I will go ahead, Mary Jo. I see you muted.
Well, so I've been a member, since I was a young woman, first in Livonia and then in Dearborn. And basically, I support the mission of uh, making sure women are educated or advancing the education of women, broadly speaking. I didn't think too much about it. I was very involved in another organization, and I just basically wanted, to support the group because I believed in it. And then, like I said, I kind of went away for a while. Then I came back to an annual meeting, and somebody was talking about choice, and of course that's one of my big passions. And I thought, oh, okay, I got to get back in. But so I've been, like I said, a member for years, and really like the women in my group. And so I had been listening to Mary Pollock's calls for years as I can't remember her name, but the woman that runs the public policy. Anyway, uh,
Ruth Brown?
pardon me.
Ruth Brown?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, she's on the call, by the way.
I
She's one of
thought
the
so. I thought I
AAWs
saw
not
her.
on screen.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
just
Okay.
so hi, Ruth.
Okay.
But
So anyway, the president asked if I would be the public policy person, and I said, well, if I had lots of time and I had something to choose, that's probably what I would choose. I said I will do it with the caveat that, there I do have priorities. So this was perfect for me this time. Nothing else scheduled, and it gives me an idea of what's going on with AUW. And I just wanted to share this, that I don't know when it was, within the last 4 years, I remember somebody saying, well, AUW is trying to be the new now.
hmm
So I don't know where that came from, but I love the president of now. But anyway, so I'm not sure I answered your question, but I appreciate that we continue to be concerned about um, making sure women are educated. Um, I know a few years ago, it was probably during the election, there was a lot of emphasis on citizenship, and that was what really perked me up. I'm an active member of my league, and anyway, so I'm just here to kind of learn more, and I want to do, a better job in my branch or affiliate, um, as much as I can.
Fantastic. And yeah, I was kind of asking for an elevator speech, but that's your why, and that's also really
Oh, I'm
good.
sorry.
No,
Yeah,
no, but that's your why, and that
yeah.
makes a ton of sense too, and fills in kind of what I'm looking for. I'm just kind of looking at where everybody's start point of what drew them to AAW and what they emphasize when they speak to other people. And so that's perfect, Mary Jo. Does anybody want to volunteer? Or am I calling on someone next? Suzanne, you're
I
so
can,
good.
okay, I can just say that I usually will just be very succinct and say that it's an organization that's been around since the 1880s, advocating for equality for women and girls.
Yep. Good elevator speech, good summary. And I'll touch on what I like and don't like because I use the same thing about that kind of which has been AEW's, like our logo, right? Empowering women and girls since 1881. And so that really fits in well, and obviously we're not straying far from that with this new strategic plan, but where I think it helps to fill it in a little bit more. So thank you for that. And Sharon, do you want to share where your AAWY or your elevator speech?
Yes, I just try again, like everybody else, to sort of make it short, but to the point that I try to talk about economic equity. That
Hmm.
especially women that are joining now are basically retired, and they realize themselves that maybe they don't have enough, or they don't have as much as they'd like to have, because they might feel they weren't paid as well as men were paid. So I try to hit them where they would realize it, and then we're working toward the young person now, getting a decent salary and being respected, and that sort of thing, just kind of, and try to pass economic laws that would help women and children, get ahead, keep going, and that sort of thing. That's basically what I say.
Fantastic. And so one thing that all these answers have shown is I think what's still at the heart of AAW, but also the evolution of AAW's mission. So I joined in my late 20s in about 2008 or 9, I forget. And that was the thing then, is it was real, the organization was really doing a lot with reproductive rights. They were doing a lot with equal pay day, obviously, which is kind of has been our signature piece, if you will. Not, that a lot of that originated with us. And then, then it was, we're just trying to stand up for women since 1881. Then Kim Churches became the executive director. And that was where it wasn't a strategic plan, if I remember correctly. And that's where we're going to keep this informal because I'm not going to be citing a ton of sources. And my memory is somewhat spongy. But it was basically, okay, here's what we know now in Planned Parenthood are doing a great job of advocating for policy for women's reproductive health. We are 100% still supporting them because that ties into economics too for women, right? The ability to choose if you have children or not, how and when, all of that. We still support it, but we don't need to be putting all of our efforts and our staff time and everything else and the limited that we have into fighting the battle that somebody's already fighting when we can just be at their side. And that was kind of similar for education. Not that we are walking away from education at all, but not trying to be the advocates like on our own mission because there are other organizations doing it. So again, we walk side by side with them in our own states, etc. We advocate for what we might want to, but that was also going to be not the number one thing that we were going to be originators on, I guess is the way to put it. So, you know, and so there were some others. And so what we landed on though was, and this all ties into it, is talking about the economics though of women, the pay gap, what that does to women's retirement, how childcare or being the home care worker or the caregiver actually costs money to the woman and their families, but isn't factored into the costs of having children or aging because it's just assumed that the mother, daughter, whomever is going to be there to fill the gap. And they are, you know, you certainly, I think a lot of us have gone through or watched people go through being the caregiver for their family. Nobody's getting a check at the end of the month from Social Security for helping their parents. Nobody's getting a check at the end of the month for taking care of their child instead of being in the workforce or well in the workforce. And so, you know, these economic factors that have been identified that are little, you know, maybe there's one-off organizations or smaller ones, that's really where we can originate policy and where we can work on some things. So I'm going to share my screen here. Well, oh, I'm going to share my screen in a minute because I don't have the right page in front of me. Just one second. I always plan and then I'm 1 second off here. And there is a one sheet that AAW has done too, and it's really great. And I will probably bring that up too. But what I really love right now is this page. And so there's a great video on this page from Gloria Blackwell. I highly recommend watching it if you haven't really got dug into the strategic plan yet. But I like these purpose statements that we have. And I just was speaking at my branches fall kickoff, and I went through these. And again, it was a lot of head nodding. And these are women that I've known for a long, like over a decade. And they've been in AAW, most of them for a couple decades, like some of you have shared. And so I think this is where I'm excited about the strategic plan because it touches on what a lot of us do with scholarships, with the payday advocacy, with everything else, and our focus on education, with a very distinct definitions, or not distinct definitions, but mission points. And so reading through them, and I won't do too much, we believe that higher education is a key driver to achieving economic prosperity. We've always believed in education. We've always talked about it. I know most branches give scholarships. I think making that statement that we believe in it, tying it to economic prosperity, gives us the different perspective than other organizations that are education focused as well. It's not different missions, right? Nobody's not trying to get people to achieve those higher degrees and to keep their education moving forward, but it's tying into that pillar. We believe economies thrive when all women are empowered and educated, right? We know this. We have all the statistics that have been shared, but it's women getting education. It's allowing them to participate in the educational systems that we have, higher education, and being able to fully recognize their talents. That lets them make more money in their lifetime, which helps with all of the other things we've already covered. And it also is just hugely important for finding a career that will also, I look at this way, and this is definitely me inserting it, but we were talking about how you talk to younger people. I think that that's also part of helping somebody find a fulfilling career. And we know, looking at, you know, recent changes in economic trends and, you know, there was, I don't know how to say it, but generationally, there's not the loyalty to employers that there used to be, for good reason. People are doing what we've always preached to do, actually. If people aren't paying you enough and won't match your pay, go find a better job. Or, you know, get into a field that is giving you what you need to succeed and thrive in life. And so I'm kind of adding that layer myself, but I think that, again, your audience depends on what you're talking about. And so these are some good talking points. We believe in equitable access to higher education that is diverse and inclusive and free from harassment and discrimination that could hinder the advancement of women. Another tenet that we have, it's not official, it's not, you know, when we redid it, it wasn't one of the pillars per se, but we are, I think, one of the better organizations out there advocating about Title IX. Lots of our organizations support it. Nobody's not doing it. But again, we have the ability, because of this economic factor that we talk about, to make Title IX and that this access to higher education we want a priority, and it has been a priority for a very long time. I know our CU reps at our college here, Northwestern Michigan College, we've always usually had somebody who's really well versed on Title IX. Our last CU, who was my co-president for a while, actually helped write the policy at her college. Not everybody has that expertise within their branch, but that's the importance, and that's the factor, and that's the people that that we're working with. And Title IX, especially with what we've seen happen from executive orders on and off the last 8 or so years, is something still hugely important to advocate for and to fight for. And I say those two words differently because even if we have the best of times, that still can be tighter. We know what happens with the reporting of sexual assaults on campuses have always been low. I remember when I started, there were a couple the Hunting Ground documentary was going around about college students being unsafe and the low number of reports, and it was illuminating something that we all kind of already knew about. But that's what will always be a factor because that hasn't changed significantly. But right now also is fighting for it because we have a executive right now that is not that's basically trying to cut Title IX again to the bone, if allowed. So we believe women deserve the opportunity to pursue and thrive in any career they choose. Again, that gets into more freedom to explore what your educational options are and to succeed in that with, in any way we can help. That is why I think a lot of us give scholarships and we look at either the background of the student going into college, or in our case at Traverse City, I've always been very proud that our scholarship only goes to somebody who's been in school for 2 years or more or is returning to school. And that's huge. And I'm working on, as a side personal note, I just got hired about 2.5 months ago by NMC, Northwestern Michigan College, and Michigan Works. I'm a joint employee through a grant. And I'm working on the the governor's 60 by 30 initiative, which is 60% of Michiganders with a degree, a certification, or an accreditation by 2030. So I am the industry navigator. So I reach out to the businesses, but I'm with a team of 3 other people for Prosperity Zone 2, which sounds silly, but it's the 10 county region up here north. It's, Grand Traverse, Wexford, Cadillac, Cadillac's Wexford, Leelanau and why did Benzie as ones you might know because there were popular. Those are all counties with popular tourist destinations that were within our region. Oh, and up in Charlevoix and Emmett counties too, and Emmett is where Petoskey is. So we kind of cover the main West Coast, Northwest Coast tourist destinations with ours. And I say that because that's obviously part of what we're studying. But I say this all to say too is getting the women, especially back into school, is my coworker who's the student navigator's job of letting them know what funding options are available out there. And because that's what can make or break it is that women have left because they had a child or something happened with the family and now they're a caregiver or some other responsibilities falling on them. And so that is, again, that economic factor that we all talk about, we work about at the branch level up. We believe working women deserve equitable access and advancement in their careers, free from harassment and discrimination, with equity of pay, greater access to quality and affordable dependent care, paid family, medical, and sick leave, and a full range of reproductive health services to ensure economic security. That bullet point is another one that I really, really love because it is summarizing that what in the past we kind of said, hey, we acknowledge we support all of this, but now we're focusing on the economics of being women. This is also naming names. So, right, this is really giving us our priorities, or not, these are our priorities for us, but these are really giving us those issues that we can name and talk about when we're talking to maybe a younger work professional woman that's joining, having reproductive healthcare services and paid family leave and childcare are probably huge issues for any woman that has children right now. Reproductive health is huge for any woman. There's so many attacks on, just here in Michigan, we've had, what was it, 3 Planned Parenthood clinics closed. And it's just and I've heard, I'll share anecdotal that was, and I think this also goes into recruiting. I'll share anecdotally that when, the Planned Parenthood in Petoskey area closed, one of my friends who's gay went to the hospital group there to do his PrEP treatment and was told, oh, we don't do that because it's a liability here. That's not true. And that's not even supposed to be an option. And so this is where I would say that, we're the University Women group, right? But We allow colleges in now, we allow some other things. I think we always have to think about women because I find that I will just share, and this is just my 2 cents, certainly not an actual part of the AAW strategic plan, although diversity is mentioned above, and that means a lot of things. I find that a lot of gay men are actually very interested in the mission of AAW because they see this happening to their friends, they see this happening to their mothers in their lives, other family members. I shouldn't say gay men, LGBTQ community in general. I just happen to know more gay men. I shouldn't have put it that broadly, but and so because of things like that, because of the healthcare access that they can sometimes have trouble with, and sometimes even taking on caregiver roles and things. I think a lot of people in our LGBTQ community, whether they are identify as female or not, have have a lot of affinity for what our goals are, and this new strategic plan lets us kind of outline it a little more clearly, I think. That's a side note on recruitment, but what I love, to bring it back to this point, what I love about this is that we are addressing discrimination. We're very, if you haven't been reading, we're not taking the EI out of equity and inclusion out of AAW. We are a independent nonprofit organization. We've never taken federal funding, so we don't have to do that. They can't control us in that way. So there is a deep commitment from top to bottom of not playing the word game. And I work, like I said, I work at a college now. They're playing the word game a little, and I understand because we do get federal funding there, but they're being very creative about it. So thankfully, we don't have to do that. And I hope that people continue to, our organizations like ours continue to stand strong. But I'm very proud of AAW for doing that. And then we get into these other issues that are very much things we can advocate for. Just in my own community, we just finished a strategic plan, and our average homeowner age is 65 years old in the city of Traverse City. But one of the top issues identified in the strategic plan by community outreach was childcare and the lack of it in our community. There's pictures outside the YMCA that offers a summer course at 2 a.m. the morning that they open of parents who have bought their membership just so they qualify for the childcare and sitting in their cars in northern Michigan in February. And so it's an issue, and it's something that needs to be advocated for anyways. It's something that is kind of the kind of thing that we can focus in on, that I'm sure no one in Planned Parenthood would disagree, and I'm sure no one in now would disagree that it's an issue that affects women, but we have that ability to um, talk about it through the lens of what we do and how we view our equity, our battle for equity. And lastly, we believe in dignity of all women, inclusive of the backgrounds they represent, including race, ethnicity, age, socioeconomic status, religious beliefs, disability, gender identity and sexual orientation, and geographic location, and value their equitable participation in education, the workforce, and policy decisions. Again, this is kind of summarizing everything that the other pillars have been, or the other points have been talking about, but can't underline enough that we are not walking away from this commitment. This is who we are. When one of my brief stints, one of my roles I've worn on the state board was the DEI director, I think is what it was called at the time, but our diversity and equity inclusion chair. And I just put a survey out, just a survey monkey kind of thing, to branch presidents and leaderships members. So maybe I think there were some programs or something in there too. And asked what does diversity look like in your community? And I'm from Traverse City. I can tell the stats are very low here. Probably our largest statistic for ethnic diversity is our indigenous population that lives in the region. We don't have a ton of religious diversity, but we have a temple and we have a mosque here now, kind of makeshift where they've been able to build. Gender identity and sexual orientation for Traverse City, people again don't think of it as very diverse. We have by per capita, actually a very diverse population in that regard that often gets ignored. So this is what had gotten me thinking down that line, right? And where I was coming from at that time too, and it is something that I'm also going to comment on that I think has been a great improvement at AAW of Michigan. And that is the diversity of one of the things they mentioned is geographic location. When I joined the board, I was the only member not from Southeast Michigan. And they used to do quarterly meetings in person, and they were always down in Ypsilanti. There's a really great spot there at the hospital, and I forget what it's called now. And so like two of them were there, and then there'd be a retreat, and everything was always located downstate. That meant the recruiting often happened from downstate, and those are our biggest branches, and it makes sense. Jan Van Gass, who was on this call, came on shortly after I did from the UP, and we've done a better job of diversity of location. And what I think that means is that's gotten us to think about how we program and how we have our conversations differently, because it's not people who are all used to kind of being in that same corner of the world where everything is happening for the state, where you can go to any performance, concert, lecture. U of M's there, Detroit, with all of the cultural things they have to offer and all the conversations they're having, which are very important conversations that AAW should be a part of. But we're kind of lacking a more rural perspective. And I think that gets into why, again, I have ADHD, but I promise I'll get there. Is that, and I haven't taken my meds this morning yet. That gets into how do we look at diversity? Because I think the default for most people, even now, but especially then, was it's race. And maybe it's religion as well. And that is hugely important to focus on and be aware of. No one piece is more important than the other. But I think it also gave the conversation a chance to be a little bit of a default, I guess you could say, to just talking about race. And because of the membership from Southeast Michigan, and it is hugely important, but it almost gave a free pass, but not really, to less, more rural, less diverse on the face of it through that lens communities, and I'll use it like Traverse City. And so that was when I was asked to take the role, I struggled because I said, I'm from Traverse City, the Great White North, right? And so that was really a challenge to me, though, because when I was going over basically this statement, but it wasn't quite the same then, and saying, oh, there's a lot of representation that we don't do a great job of identifying, period, here. I'll share a quick story. We had a leadership conference up here, and I think it was in 16, fall of 16, maybe it was spring. And the state programs person challenged me with finding a panel and said, well, I'm going to bring up somebody because I don't think you're going to have a diverse panel. And without it being tokenism, with people in our community who were leaders, I was able to find my friend who was leading one of our largest charities, who coordinates all the AAPI events for our region. We had someone from Up North Pride speak, and we had a business owner who was African American. And it's surprising, but because we looked for experts in the field and chose people who had diversity who were experts, not just, hey, I found some people of color in our region and let's put them up on a panel. It was a really good conversation that we were able to have and highlight, both surprising my own community, but also I think the state of what we had to offer, but also, again, including Up North Pride, including that kind of not thought of. So when I did the survey, I had people come back and say, well, we're in a white area. And I said, what's your LGBTQ community like? And they said, oh, if we had a lesbian join our group, my people would quit. And I know, thank you, Mary Jo. That's a very appropriate reaction. This was in, I think I joined the board in 2015. And I was secretary for one flamingly terrible year, and because I am not a person who's born to be a secretary of an organization, and so this would have been like 15, 16-ish, and that was surprising to hear that. But our Leslie Carpenter joined us briefly as DEI chair, and she's finding that her work at that she's doing volunteering for Pride in Ypsilanti is making her step away from the position, unfortunately. But she pointed that out, that her branch had a similar reaction just this year. So or question, why would we participate in Pride? And so there's still work to be done on this. I think this is the key thing to talk about here. I think in our hearts and when we have conversations, we are an organization that wants to embrace this, but that we might not always. It's that membership push and the conversations we have and the conversations we don't feel comfortable having, that I'm hoping this will help us open up and have more of that dialogue going and state it more plainly. We've always kind of talked about diversity can mean any kind of diversity. Now we've got some really good examples laid out here. So that's why I love this page. The one pager has like 3 bullet points. They're really good. There's a nice broad header on them. But I like this because of the very tangible examples and pieces that it highlights without it just being a bullet point of, now go out on your own. This is just a little bit more in depth. And so I can share this in the chat in a moment. I think I can do that. I sure can. And I'm going to stop sharing screen so we can have a conversation a little bit now, though. Put in the chat before I forget. So again, that's that page. If you want to grab that, it has both the video from Gloria Blackwell at the beginning of it and the points that we just went over. And I think it's a really great place to start when if you want to talk about this or just study more. So now I wanted to just check back in with our 3 non-board members because we did talk about this at the board retreat in August as board members. Does anybody want to kind of share how you feel about, I know I gave a little bit of glowing, so, I wasn't unbiased. But, share your thoughts, any critiques you might have, or what in there has you excited or you're glad to see. Go ahead, Mary Jo. You're muted, Mary Jo, sorry.
You mentioned at the beginning of your talk just now that economics is most important. And I don't think that that's been emphasized, at least from what I've seen, because I was surprised when you said that you kind of compared AUW's emphasis on education to its emphasis or lack of emphasis on reproductive choice, like other groups are doing it. So when you say other groups are doing education, are you talking about like PTAs or National Education Association, that kind of thing?
Yeah, and I'm thinking about when I said that, I apologize because that's a good point to bring up. In the way I was kind of contextualizing that, I was thinking of like lobbying and, doing those major pushes on policy. And so you have the
Okay.
NEA, you have MEA here in Michigan, and you have some other larger education groups doing those pushes. Um, so that's really what I was talking about, and
Okay.
that's again not to the exclusion that AAW members can't or shouldn't. It's that they, that is what they, especially their lobbyists, live and breathe. So,
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
mhm.
Uh, uh, so, link need for high, okay, it resounded with me. Link the need for higher education with economic prosperity. Title IX. Now, I do associate AUW with Title
Mhm.
IX, and I figure if there's a Title IX issue, in our community, I hope AUW is going to do something about it.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's all.
Yeah, that's one we've always been good at, and I think will continue to be. I mean, if you looked at, I don't think they have them there anymore, but National used to have those stickers you could order for events if you're tabling, and they literally were about Title IX. So that's definitely not something we've ever ignored. But it's not going away now either, which is good to see.
Yeah. And then I'm wondering when you're talking about, well, first of all, diversity can also include diversity of opinion.
Mm,
Because I know as a newer person, people have come up to me privately, and said, "Oh, I'm so glad you said that." But
absolutely.
yeah, but I will share that I was very shocked with the vote. I don't know, was it a year ago, about the membership requirements. Do you see any of this different, maybe different emphases or letting people know and acting on the different emphases? Do you think that will make people think a little bit more about what we should be about and say, well, of course. I mean, to me, I don't see that I don't think there should be any educational requirements. I think it should be like, okay, I care about choice, so go to, Planned Parenthood. I care about vote, go to the League of Women Voters. So I'm just wondering
Mhm.
if what you think.
I will field this question. Jan Van Gass, who is on here, and I do not want to have her speak at all, not because I don't love her and not because she isn't knowledgeable, but because she has been fighting. She's on a lot of national committees, and she has been fighting for this vote for years now, including the last one. I think if you look at it, it was a matter of a couple percentage points this time around. So every time we host the vote, it seems to edge just a little closer. And I think every single time we have the conversation, it gets couched in a slightly better way. So I think it's improving the conversation. Now, one thing I am very curious about, or one thing I'll share that I think might be part of the issue, and it's one of my own members has it, is because there's been this degree requirement at the beginning, and so a lot of members have been members for decades. Um, they it's almost viewed like it's a professional association, like it's the American Medical Association or something, even though it's not. So I had a member say that to me. Well, the AMA doesn't just let anybody in. And that's kind of having that conversation. And so what we all, and it's a great question because actually this is how we need to talk a little bit more about ourselves. And I think, again, the new strategic plan pillars and how we talk about it, nothing in there says your degree, nothing in there says professional background. We just say trying to achieve higher education. And I think that's part of what we can say is, yeah, we're not advocating for policy for how to make doctors better or to, help with malpractice, frivolous malpractice suits. We're talking about general policies that help women, and that doesn't require a degree to care about or to get engaged with. And so, and I'm going to be totally biased here. I know there are people who, and I don't think any of them are on this call, knowing the women on here that I do, but I that helps because I think fewer and fewer of them are here. I think pushing that conversation and being a little uncomfortable when we're talking in our own branches. I know our branch has book clubs and bridge and all kinds of things like that. And so sometimes no one wants to have that conversation with their member, but our membership isn't just social. It has a mission. And to your point about diversity of thought, if you're behind that mission, and, I, to a point, I think who you vote for matters because some people aren't going to support our mission. It's not a reason to kick you out, but I'm just saying, where there can be that difference of opinion, but not everybody in AAW, I guarantee, even in living in the same city on the same day, is going to have the same vote on their ballot. And so that diversity of thought and thing is important. And that comes from us having more voices in the room. And that happens by opening things up more. I will say again, with the work that I've been doing, there's a real push for certification right now. To become a welder or to become a paralegal is a program. It is a course. And right now it doesn't count as being a member or a valid, degree for AAUW. And that's a shame to me because even though it's not a 2-year associate's degree, which that was changed years ago because it used to be, we were just talking about this at my brunch, and thankfully most of the members that were at this smaller brunch last week were all saying, it started out as just university, period. And then they started letting colleges, because that was even a change. And then they started letting in 2-year community colleges degrees to count. And so there's been this evolution. And at some point, we either have, the other thing we'll have to talk about realistically is we'll have diluted things down so much that we might as well make it open membership or just acknowledge that there is, it's baffled me, much like you, how we can have women who are pursuing a higher education who are getting, working towards a degree or working in a profession. I look at my own mother. She worked in the electrical industry for 25 years, but went to college in 1972, and nobody was telling her to be an engineer. And so she went to get her like teaching certificate and didn't finish it. But she is uh she would have been a prime example of somebody who would have thrived in a group like AAW. But instead, when I took her to the first meeting and didn't really realize it, people had to be like, "Oh no, you can't be a member."
Oh
And
God.
so I think about that example all the time. So I've gone a little off the beaten path here, but to get to the
Amy,
bigger
can
picture.
I interject
Yes, go
one
ahead,
thing?
Jen.
Well, to answer these questions, my son is getting married and on Mackinac Island. So,
Yay.
Wow.
right. So anyways, so that's why I'm not on screen for real. We do have a new group for inclusive membership, and that's what we are in fact calling the movement. We're just studying the data this year, and then we'll bring it to the AAUW's board of directors, probably for a vote next year, if that makes sense.
So what does
Um,
that mean, Jan?
well, what it means is, okay, it's embarrassing that the number of people that did not vote,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess we're really studying that data this year. Um, so we could do an individual reach out to the branch presidents prior to say, you know, we need to discuss this at a meeting or whatever to present the data. And we've got toolkits and all that stuff. But, you know, it's really bringing people up to date, like you're saying, Amy. But I think it's embarrassing. We were very close to passing it,
Mhm.
but the number of people that didn't vote is overwhelming. So, you know, of course, they could have been negative votes. We're not counting that out, but we probably would strategically look at those branches that were primarily affirmative, but not very many people voted. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So anyways, so I will sort of move on with my day now.
No, that's okay. Enjoy your beautiful wedding. What a
Well,
raining here.
yeah.
I hope it's not there yet.
Well, it is, but anyways, hopefully by 5 o'clock it will not be. So,
Oh, perfect. You got time.
yep. Okay, talk to you later.
Perfect.
Well,
Thank you.
and
It's
it is good luck if it rains on your wedding day.
oh, that's true. That's true. Very good point.
Okay.
Tell him that we all shared that and we are all wishing him the best of luck.
Mhm.
Okay,
Um,
thank you.
Yes, and so Mary Jo, that touches on it too. But again, what Jan's kind of talking about, I think, is something that we can talk about here. And Sharon, I see your hand up, and I'll get to you in just one second. Is the conversations we have and can't be afraid to have in our membership to keep talking about this. I mean, you know, that's again, I'm running for re-election right now, and the quantity that in the conversations that we have is yard signs don't vote right. Who's listening to whose conversations and who they're telling people to vote for. And that, you know, that peer-to-peer thing is very, very valuable, and it also normalizes things. In my work, we're talking what I'm doing through the industry is trying to get more employers to actually pay to train their employees and make that a normal thing. We're talking about maybe creating a certification for it because that positive peer pressure can sometimes lead to change. And so that's where I think we have to have that, make sure we're having those conversations at branch. Doesn't have to be even a formal presentation, but bringing that up to people. Go ahead, Sharon, for right now.
Okay, yesterday at the Southeast Consortium luncheon meeting, we talked about the same thing, communications, trying to get to our members, and our branch, Rochester, is trying the community associates. Our board voted overwhelmingly unanimous, -1, but you know, we still are dragging our feet a bit, but we want, you know, women who have the mission and women that are career women and women that believe in helping women no matter what their circumstances are. And a degree does not mean that you are a light bulb that, you know, anybody wants. It just happens that you have a degree and maybe you had other, you know, opportunities than somebody else did, sort of thing. And we even talked about how people don't read online because the overwhelming age group is 65 to 85, and they're just as busy as when they worked, sort of thing, and they're not reading their emails. And I tried to send an email myself to my entire membership through my email person, who didn't get the message, you know, and did not send it. So people from my branch, if they didn't read the newsline, which was fabulous from Michigan AAUW, they don't know anything about today, type of thing. And I think some of them would have enjoyed, you know, being here, but either they didn't read it, didn't notice it, didn't send it in, who knows what. So we thought, do we need to go back to a printed newsline? You know, meaning so that everybody has it in front of them so that they can refer to it or look at it or whatever. So it's just kind of, and with the community associates, I mean, people are just afraid that somebody's going to get in, just like years back when they invited men to join and when they invited 2-year you know, women to join. And you know, it's all these change that people are afraid of. And how can you be the American Association of University Women if you've got somebody in your group that doesn't have a university degree? All these silliness that women are really knifing each other in the back. I mean, why aren't you helping women instead of holding them back, period, you know, that sort of thing. So that's where we're at in our branch. But I think it's something worthwhile because eventually we have changed minds over the last couple years from, you know, before. So, you know, things are getting better. But should we have to fight for, we fought for the vote for what, 50, 60, 80, 90 years. Do we have to
Mhm.
fight for this for another 60 years? You know, it really doesn't make sense, but I don't know why women, and maybe men too, you know, why do people think that way?
Well, and I think that would be an opportunity, and what you're saying about your branch discussing the community membership, I think it's a good start to have that conversation, but it's also a good opportunity to say, um, to say to your branch, okay, we're letting them in, and maybe I don't know where your branch is at, but I know a lot of branches are struggling to find new help and leadership, but none of these members can be on our leadership board. Or, because a community member is not allowed to be president or finance
It's
chair or program.
it's just finance and treasure. I mean, treasure and
I
president.
thought it was all the VPs too,
No,
programs
they
and
basically
membership.
specifically say, finance and I guess president is what they really say in
Okay.
something.
Well, Jan said that
Yeah.
before, but maybe they were able to make some changes without it being a big vote. But so those are opportunities though to say like, we're great. We're getting those new members and they can participate a little bit, but they can't be full members. And so still good to, have that conversation and move the needle, but a good opportunity to point out that separate but equal isn't equal, And so that's just part of that conversation that we'll have to keep having. Suzanne, did you want to share any thoughts? It doesn't have to just be about the
I had
membership.
an unrelated question.
Mhm.
When you were talking about possibly shifting the emphasis away from the educational mission to the um, financial equity piece in terms of emphasis. What about the national fellowships, and are they still as active as before? Will it continue? That sort of thing.
Absolutely. And I think you've touched on a really good point there that um, that fund at one point, and I've got to double check, but that fund at one point was considered one of the ones that they wanted people to stop donating to because it's so filled that it's like funded through like your grandchild or your great grandchild's, future. Um, so that is still going on. I think where we need to do better as an organization, and I would even say, although Carol's doing an amazing job right now, I would point to our branch. In the winter when we used to do Zooms, they used to get fellows to speak to our branch because in Traverse City, just because of the weather, was meeting online January, February, March. Understand now they've peeled it back to January and February. Um, but we don't connect with the fellows in the same way unless you live in cities that have universities. So I know Ann Arbor sometimes will get some of the fellows there, or they'll be able to bring them in to speak, or they stop through because there's, attending a conference or something. Demet, who is kind of leading the charge in the new Lansing branch, was an AAW fellow, so she's really great to have it on our cadre of leadership at the state, in the state. But it is a very big disconnect. And I think it's a really important one to emphasize, though, because it does transform people's lives. Demet and I spoke at a Women's Equality Day event last month, and she gave a really brief but I thought kind of profound speech about being forced to be into a marriage in Turkey, where she's from, and eventually being able to divorce and go on. And now she teaches at MSU. And because of the AAW fellowship that allowed her to continue that higher education while she was here and stay here. And so it has that impact on women's lives. It is funded, but to your point, Suzanne, it is a huge part of, there's a lot of people who tell their stories of things they're able to do, the successes they're able to have in their career because of AAW's funding. And we do need to figure out how to do a better job with that. And we can't require branches to do an online meeting. Maybe that's an actually great idea for programming. Don't worry, Sharon McKenna. I'm not gonna just hand this to you and run away. But maybe once a year or so, we should have an effort as a state branch to do some kind of a program that invites a fellow to speak about something or a couple to talk on a theme, and and be able to kind of emphasize that that is what we are investing in. So thank you. Yeah, good point. Good point. So it's kind of part of that I think on the pillars that we talked about, it's part of that encouraging people into higher education, but it is also it's something huge that we do and we should emphasize it more, even if it's not directly outlined. So that ended up being, oh, did you want to say something else, Suzanne? Okay, it looks like you're putting your hand up, sorry. Um So we started a couple minutes late, so we can go a couple more minutes. And this conversation has been really involved. I didn't know if we were going to have a lot of time to talk about some general things. So I appreciate that. But were there any kind of general questions you had right now? Again, not to like leave you on a cliffhanger and make you come back next month. But I'll kind of go over some of the same stuff next month. I think hopefully if we have more people, I think it'll be a little less me directly asking people things and maybe a little bit more on the spot and continuing the conversation going. But I wanted to just see if there was any general AAW Michigan questions you had or any kind of, and I'm going to look first to our non-board members. If you have any kind of general questions, go ahead, Sharon.
Yeah, I just was wondering about Nick Whistle. Does anyone know how successful that was this year? Because since it was, I don't know about different format, but a different group sponsoring it.
So I do have Barb has been doing some of our CU stuff. I don't know if you guys have gotten the report on how successful it was or not. Barb, nope, no report yet.
I haven't seen it. I'm trying to work with one of the Birmingham members to take that spot on the state board because I'm stepping into president-elect and I just don't have enough, I don't have enough headroom for another hat. So, um, so yeah, I'm working with her and we've just had not connected yet, but I haven't really seen much about that. And Jan I don't know if Jan logged off or she's still on, but yeah, I haven't seen much come through on how it went last year in May or this past
Mhm.
May.
Yeah, it seems like now that it's under that header, it's because it isn't through AAW anymore, it's an opportunity for young women. And I don't think fundamentally it's changed a whole lot, but it's not ours to own the data on. So Sharon, go ahead. You got
Yeah,
another.
the other question I had, unfortunately, I signed up for Thursday's AAUW get together,
gathering,
and I
fall
totally
gathering.
forgot I was helping out with a garage sale. And by the time I got home, it was like 6:30-ish. And I thought, oh no. And did anybody go to that and hear
There's
about
a
the
report. You
five-star?
can
Hold
you
on,
can
Ruth.
watch the
Let's let
recording.
Ruth stop for a second, everybody. The people started talking while somebody else was speaking, and that got really muddled here. So, Sharon, you're just asking what the report from Thursday was? Okay. And so both Barb and Ruth started kind of talking at the same time. So,
Go ahead, Ruth.
yeah.
Watch the recording.
Okay.
Mhm.
Barb, did you want to give a little bit of a
No,
summary?
I was just saying I was there for the first half of it. I listened to Gloria Blackwell, and obviously they went through the priorities and the mission again, and Megan Cassell went through some of that as well. But again, like Ruth said, if you want to watch the recording, that's the best way to capture it at your leisure when you have time. So
Um, Great. And Mary Jo, you've got your hand
Yeah,
up.
just real quickly. So this is still on what we were talking about, but I was just thinking, okay, so the League of Women Voters, when it first started, it was only women. And for a long time, you had to be 18 and you had to be, I think you had to be a citizen. And so at some point in the 70s, it became open to men,
Mm-hmm.
never changed the name. And now you just have to be 16.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Okay.
don't think I should really look that up. But anyway, all to say is it's the mission, it's the idea.
Mm-hmm.
LWV is people who care about the right to vote. So to
Mm-hmm.
me, AUW, even though you know you look at if you want to spell everything out, you could hopefully in the future it'll be like League, where you just think of it as a group that cares about education and its relationship to a person's future economics or something like that.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing too that I would say is generationally changing. And I agree with you, it's people in general. And we now, I think, there's a lot of ways to look at it, but I also think that future generations are more empathetic. So I think you will get men that even though it doesn't directly benefit them, would want to join to support allowing more access to higher education, protecting Title IX, things like that as well. And so I agree with you that, the other organizations have evolved as well, and we can too. And it is close, and I know Jan and all of them go through the numbers. And so what I'm hearing is I might suggest you to the next committee that Jan works on to the 5th when the next vote comes up. I know even at one point the board was so frustrated they were trying to find ways in legal ways, but like tricks around the bylaws to even try and change it, or like not check if your university status when you apply. And there were some ramifications of that. But what I mean by sharing that is that's how committed even the leadership of the organization is to opening it up. This isn't coming from on high of like some people have trying to have like a tight fist on things. It's just getting that 66% that was required by the bylaws to change it. And as we know, like when you have the filibusters in the Senate and things, that those can be good or bad when you have that higher percentage mark to pass certain things. And this is one of those instances where it feels like it's a very large hurdle that we wish wasn't there and probably isn't serving our community very well by having it. But I'm sure there are other things in the past or even will come up that we'll be glad that we have that more thoughtful consideration on. So, the nuclear options, as they're called in the Senate and other places, aren't always what we want, but we can see why sometimes they are. I've lost track who is the AAW Michigan with the hand up that I can't see their face. There's a hand.
Oh, it's Katie.
Oh, Katie, sorry, I forgot. It's my
Oh,
memory, it's
well,
not you.
hey, I didn't have the link. What can I say? So, anyway, so now that National has updated their strategic plan, are they working on a long range plan to implement those goals?
So I think what they're doing, and I haven't checked, and if anybody was on the call and heard this, I need to go back to the call on Thursday night because I was at another event. Um, what often happens with the strategic plan is either you've redefined some major pillars, and then you have room underneath during the length of the strategic plan to identify specific actions. Or sometimes a strategic plan will be a 2 to 3 year plan of these are our pillars. Here's how we're going to work as an organization of talking about them and working on them. And then a strategic plan, honestly, in theory, can last up to 10 years. And then sometimes like what they're doing at our college right now is they had one. They're not going out in their 3 years in. They're not going out and starting a whole new strategic plan. What they're doing is from the pillars and how they were able to drill into the organization and get some information and see what was working with some initiatives, is now trying to whittle that down to some more specific goals for the next 3 years that are still falling under those broad headers. But now that they've been able to assess the organization, see how some of that fits in, get some creative ideas. It's how my job came to be, is they said we want to broaden the front door of our community college so that it's not just, recruiting kids who might not be ready to go to school or people who are coming back. It's, people who might not know we have a welding program. It's people who might not know that we have, these non-traditional courses. We have an aviation program and drones certification and things. And so, changing, not just leaving it an admissions recruitment thing. And so that kind of came, that focus on that came from working on the strategic plan the last few years. So I think that that's where, and I've got to double check, but my impression was that's where AAW is like, we need to define who we are better. Let's get that going. Let's put that out there. Let's look at some initiatives. Let's look at some conversations. And then in a couple of years, we still have this like information and the structural for information. Let's figure out for our membership what that means for targeted goals. And I think that that's probably the best way to do it because I find, we're doing it as a city right now. Traverse City is, and we got real specific on each of the goals. They brought it up higher, but we have 6 pillars, and under each pillar are 6 planned action items that the community would like to see, and it's a 5 year plan. And it's a city government. Like so you have to be careful, and it's not, they're not so ambitious that it's not feasible. But this, when we were sitting down to have the discussion last week, I was talking to the person who's our consultant, and I said, please emphasize that these are for our discretionary funds, because what'll happen is we'll get into budget fights about essentials, and it'll turn into, well, that's not what the strategic plan says, and it's stuff we're actually required to do. And so I think that's where we started with this as AEW with this strategic plan, is this is looking through what we do and what our stated like mission is, but defining it more clearly, making it relevant for today, using today's examples and now going out to membership and getting more feedback of where that's working or where we can use those strengths and where we have some weaknesses in this plan and then see where that refines us. So that's what I hope to see, and that's what I'm kind of hearing in some conversations. It sounds like this was really like, let's get everybody on page, because after a couple different executive directors and changing in staffing and changing in the world that we live in, and you know 10 years ago, well, not quite 10 years ago, let's say 12 years ago, Title IX might not have been top of everybody's list, but right now with everything's going on, Title IX's kind of rise into the top. So things like that, I think, are where kind of getting everybody on page start was where we had to start, because everybody wasn't on page anymore. It wasn't that we were misaligned, it was we weren't clearly defined. So I know that was a long rambling answer. I hope that helped though. Any other questions in general right now? Strategic plan or AAW Michigan? Okay. Well, ladies, thank you for joining me this morning on my first one. Thank you for being my test audience. I hope you got something from this and it was a good experience. Oh, thank you, Suzanne. Um, we will, again, I'll be back next month. We'll go over some of the same things. So if you don't want to come back, that's fine. But if you want to and have questions, and then we've got a whole, as was shown in the newsletter, we've got a whole host of other conversations happening with everybody from the different our different chairs. And so we hope that every month it just allows you to kind of have to understand a little bit better about what's going on at the state level, how we have resources and how we have knowledge to help you at the local level, and even what's going on at national level, because as again mentioning staffing, I know that branches can feel very disconnected from the state sometimes. And so I want all of us to have that better link of communication through these events. So, Sharon?
Yeah, one last thing. I wonder
Mhm.
if all of us write up the coffee and conversations, the little bit that we, know about the plan and whatever, and just put in your email address and ask people to join you for the October one. If
Sure.
we would get more, people, and I'd like to, in a president's letter, write the strategic plan. I don't know if I want to call it that exactly, but like, why are you an AAUW member or something, so people can be reminded of what they're fighting for or what they're standing for, so they can say to other people, if we now have our community associates, plus we find membership wise we lost 8 people due to health and death this year, but only gained 4 new members, and the new members we're gaining are all 65 plus. So we're going to die out before we do whatever if we don't diverse and have
Yep.
some
And I do
variety.
think some of that clarity in our messaging can help with that. And like you're saying, I just shared also the actual strategic plan one pager. So that had some broad things. Sorry, I was going to let you guys go, but and I have to get to the farmers market, so I won't get much longer on this. But I'll share it with you all very quickly, just so you can kind of see what it looks like. The link. There we go. Um, so the strategic priority is much more defined as fund higher education, remove barriers to success in education, and strengthen AAW's reach. So this is like if you're talking to somebody younger, this might be more to the point of like, these are our 3 goals and here's why, and there's some bullet points underneath them. But I do like that other page more because it to me it does have more of that conceptual of like what we do and what we're working on. Um, these are more straight to the point. And so to your point about asking people ahead of time, what's your AAW? Even if that's not exactly what the strategic plan is going to answer, that's why I started it this way too, is both to see if people's perception of AAW is aligned with its actual mission, and just to get them kind of, I hope, re-excited of like, this is why I'm an AAW. Oh, look, they're like really pointing out with some concrete examples, whether it's this piece or the original page that I shared with you, how that actually, what that means in action or what that means for today. And so I think that's a great way to put that in. Actually, maybe before the next one, I'll ask everybody to like share so I can kind of share the highlights at the top instead of going one by one. But that's a really good example. So good idea, Sharon. Okay, anything else? Okay, well, thank you, ladies, for joining us. And to your point, Sharon, this was a little bit of a last minute ask while we were pulling things together. With 1 month, we will see if we get some more people next month and continue this conversation. But no matter when anybody joins, I think all of our members or our board are going to have really good conversations with everybody and really be hopefully another great way for us to all connect. So, and again, note that the December one is a holiday gathering. We were kind of talking, we joked that it would be hot coffee or coffee and hot chocolates. And I think it might have actually been Katie. And if not, Katie, take credit for being the party person of, does that mean that they can be spiked for that one? We'll have that conversation later. But I think it'll be good for us to have a little bit more of an informal, and we'll figure it out. Maybe we'll do a Q&A for everybody, or maybe it'll just be a sharing something from the year with AAW that we're all excited about or something. So it won't be high. That one won't be a high demand conversation, but I think it'll be a great way for members to connect. And we did that a couple times during COVID. And even though it was awkward and it was COVID, it was still kind of nice to informally meet. I will hopefully once again have my live tree behind me, making it look very festive. Getting it out this year because I waited a little too long was painful. It kind of petrified, so I have to make some decisions this year. But I try to be festive for everybody when we host those events. So in the meantime, we'll have some real conversations about roles, but we also want to leave this to have some room to have some just general conversations too as we go through these. So with that, I will let you all get on with your days. Have a great one, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks.